High in the cliffs of present-day Colorado, there are cities hidden inside the stone. Not legends, not movie sets. Real homes, real rooms, real towers, built by ancient people more than 700 years ago. They raised families here, stored food here, watched the sky here, defended life here. And then, after generations of building in the cliffs, they left. The walls remained, the rooms remained, the fingerprints in the mortar remained, but the people were gone. Why would an entire society build one of the most dramatic settlements in ancient America and then walk away? This place is Mesa Verde. It lies in the Four Corners region of the American Southwest, in what is now southwestern Colorado, near the borders of Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. Today it is protected as Mesa Verde National Park. But long before it became a park, long before tourists looked down from overlooks, long before archaeologists measured the rooms, this was home to the Ancestral Pueblo people. For centuries, they lived across the mesas and canyons of this region. They farmed, they built, they stored food, they held ceremonies. They created communities from stone, earth, wood, and memory. And during the late 100s and 1000s, they began building some of the most extraordinary homes in North America. Homes inside cliffs. The story of Mesa Verde did not begin in the cliffs. For many generations, Ancestral Pueblo communities lived on top of the mesas. They built pit houses, then above-ground pueblos. They grew corn, beans, and squash. They hunted and gathered. They made pottery. They raised children. They watched the seasons. They depended on rain, soil, water, and stored food. In this dry land, survival required planning. A failed crop was not just a disappointment. It could be a disaster. A long drought could threaten everything. Mesa Verde was beautiful, but it was not easy. The land demanded knowledge. The people had to understand where to plant, when to plant, how to store food, how to survive winters, how to prepare for dry years. They were not primitive. They were skilled farmers, builders, astronomers, artists, and community planners. Their world was complex. Their buildings prove it. Over time, their architecture changed. Early homes were simpler. Then came larger stone buildings, multi-room structures, kivas, towers, storage rooms, community spaces. By the 1001s, some communities began moving into cliff alcoves. These alcoves offered shelter from weather, shade from summer heat, protection from snow and rain, and perhaps something more, a sense of defense, a sense of sacredness, a sense of belonging inside the stone itself. The most famous of these places is Cliff Palace, built and lived in mainly during the 1001s. Cliff Palace is the largest known cliff dwelling in North America. It contains more than 100 rooms, multiple kivas, towers, passageways, open spaces, and stone walls fitted carefully beneath a massive sandstone overhang. From a distance, it looks impossible. A city suspended between earth and sky, a community tucked into the cliff as if the mountain itself was protecting it. These were not caves where people simply hid. They were built environments, planned, engineered, maintained, stone by stone, room by room, wall by wall. The builders used sandstone blocks shaped by hand. They used mortar made from mud and water. They plastered walls, they created floors, they built storage spaces, they designed kivas, circular ceremonial rooms that connected community, ritual, and identity. Everything had to fit into the shape of the alcove. The cliff was not only a backdrop, it was part of the architecture. Imagine living here, waking before sunrise with the canyon still in shadow, climbing ladders between rooms, carrying water up difficult paths, grinding corn by hand, storing food in protected spaces, watching children move carefully near steep drops, listening to wind echo under the stone roof. At night, fires would glow beneath the cliff. Voices would carry through the rooms. The canyon walls would hold the sound. This was not just survival. This was home. Cliff Palace was not alone. Across Mesa Verde, there were many sites: Balcony House, Spruce Tree House, Square Tower House, Mesa Top Pueblos, storage rooms, kivas, towers, fields, paths. The entire landscape was connected by movement, memory, family, and work. This was not one mysterious building. It was a region filled with human life. At its height, the Mesa Verde region may have held tens of thousands of people. Communities were growing, settlements were changing, and the cliffs became part of a larger transformation. The Ancestral Pueblo world stretched far beyond Mesa Verde. It connected across the four corners, across canyons, mesas, river valleys, and desert landscapes. People traded, migrated, married, shared ideas, built ceremonial spaces, watched the skies, and carried traditions that did not disappear when Mesa Verde was abandoned. That part is important. The people did not simply vanish from the earth. Their descendants live today among modern Pueblo peoples, including communities in New Mexico and Arizona. What vanished was not the people. What was abandoned were the settlements, the cliff homes, the rooms in the stone. For many years, outsiders used the word Anasazi for these ancient people. Today, many prefer the term Ancestral Puebloans. That name matters because it reminds us that this history is not dead. It is connected to living people, to descendants, to traditions, to memory. Mesa Verde is not only an archaeological mystery, it is an ancestral place. But the central question remains: why did they leave? By around 1300, the great cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde were abandoned. Not just one house, not just one village. Across the region, many settlements were left behind. Rooms were emptied, fires went cold, ladders disappeared. The walls remained under the cliffs, but the people moved on. The abandonment of Mesa Verde has haunted historians, archaeologists, and visitors for generations. The answer is not one simple event. It was not a single night of panic. It was not one sudden disappearance. It was likely a combination of pressures that built over time. Climate, drought, crop failure, population pressure, social tension, resource stress, religious change, migration, and perhaps conflict. Mesa Verde's abandonment was not the end of a people. It was the end of a way of living in that place. One of the most important pressures was drought. In the late 1200s, the Mesa Verde region faced severe environmental stress. Tree ring studies and climate evidence show long periods of below-average rainfall across the broader region. For farming communities dependent on corn, this was devastating. Corn needs water, families need harvests, communities need stored food to survive winter. When rain failed again and again, the entire system came under pressure. A single bad year could be survived. 2 bad years could be endured, but repeated dry years changed everything. Fields produced less. Wild resources became harder to depend on. Water sources weakened. Stored food ran low. Larger communities became harder to sustain. When many people live close together, hunger can create tension. Decisions become harder. Trust becomes fragile. Population also mattered. Before the final abandonment, many people in the Mesa Verde region were living in larger communities. When populations grow, land and water must support more people. More fields are needed, more wood is cut, more food must be stored, more cooperation is required. Under good conditions, large communities can thrive. Under drought and stress, they can become vulnerable. Resource pressure may have changed daily life. Wood was needed for roofs, fires, tools, and construction. Fields needed care. Soils needed to remain productive. Water had to be found and protected. As the climate became harsher, the balance between people and landscape became more difficult. The cliff dwellings may have offered shelter and defense, but they could not make rain fall. They could not fill empty fields. They could not guarantee survival. Some researchers also point to social stress and possible conflict. In parts of the region, evidence suggests increasing tension during the final decades. When resources become scarce, communities may become more defensive. People may move into more protected locations. Cliff dwellings, with their difficult access and hidden positions, may reflect a need for security. But we must be careful. The cliff homes were not only fortresses. They were homes, sacred spaces, storage places, and communities. Their meaning was likely complex. It is tempting to imagine fear everywhere, but life in the cliffs was not only fear. People still cooked, still prayed, still raised children, still repaired walls, still told stories, still watched the sun move across the canyon. Even during hard times, communities continue living. They do not become mysteries to themselves. They make choices. They adapt. They hope. Religion and ceremony may also have played a role. The Ancestral Pueblo world was deeply connected to place, sky, earth, water, ancestors, and community. Kivas were not just rooms. They were ceremonial spaces, places of gathering, places of identity, places that connected the visible world to deeper meaning. If social or religious life changed, movement could follow. Migration may not have been seen only as failure. It may also have been renewal, a way to restore balance, a way to continue life somewhere else. By the end of the 1200s, many Ancestral Pueblo communities left the Mesa Verde region and moved toward areas in present-day New Mexico and Arizona. They joined or helped form communities in places where Pueblo peoples continue to live today. This is why the word vanished can be misleading. The cliff dwellers did not disappear like ghosts. They migrated. They carried knowledge with them. They carried stories. They carried traditions. They carried memory. What they left behind were the stone rooms under the cliffs. Still, the abandoned dwellings remain haunting, because the walls feel as if people just stepped away. Doorways open into empty rooms. Kivas sit silent. Towers rise toward the stone ceiling. Storage rooms no longer hold corn. The architecture survived, but the voices are gone. That silence is what makes Mesa Verde so powerful. Centuries later, outsiders would come across these places and be stunned. In December 1888, rancher Richard Wetherill and his brother-in-law Charlie Mason are often credited with bringing Cliff Palace to wider public attention while searching for stray cattle. They looked across the canyon and saw something extraordinary under the cliff. Stone walls, rooms, towers, an entire ancient settlement hidden in the rock. To them, it must have seemed like finding a city suspended in time. But indigenous people had known these places long before outsiders described them. The land was never truly empty. The ruins were not without meaning. The rediscovery story belongs to modern American history, but the deeper story belongs to the Ancestral Pueblo people and their descendants. Over time, concern grew that the ruins needed protection. Looting, collecting, and damage threatened the sites. The ancient walls had survived centuries, but modern attention brought new danger. In 1906, Mesa Verde became a national park. It was one of the first national parks created specifically to protect cultural and archaeological heritage. That was important, because Mesa Verde was not simply a beautiful landscape. It was a record of human achievement, a place of ancestral memory, a place that needed protection from careless hands. Today, Mesa Verde National Park contains thousands of archaeological sites. Some are cliff dwellings, some are mesa-top villages, some are storage areas, towers, kivas, and scattered traces of daily life. Together, they tell a long story of human adaptation in a difficult landscape. A story that began centuries before the famous cliff dwellings. A story that continued after the cliffs were abandoned. A story that still matters to living descendant communities. The most famous sites draw the eye because they are dramatic. Cliff Palace, Balcony House, Spruce Tree House, Square Tower House. But their beauty should not distract from their humanity. These were not monuments built for tourists. They were homes. People stored food there. People slept there. Children grew up there. Hands repaired walls. Feet climbed ladders. Families watched the sky for rain. That is the real power of Mesa Verde. It is not only the mystery of abandonment, it is the closeness of the people. You can look at the rooms and imagine the work, the worry, the hope, the hunger, the ceremonies, the decisions, the final moment when someone looked back at the cliff home and knew they might never return. Why did they leave? Because the world around them changed, because rain failed, because food became harder to grow, because communities faced pressure, because survival required movement, because staying may have become more dangerous than leaving, and because migration, for many indigenous peoples, has long been part of history, identity, and renewal. The question is not only why they left. The question is how they endured. The answer is that they carried their world with them. They carried seeds, skills, stories, songs, architecture, ceremony, memory. They left stone walls behind, but they did not leave themselves behind. Their descendants remain, and because of that, Mesa Verde should not be told as a story of disappearance only. It is a story of change, survival, movement, and continuity. Still, standing before the cliff dwellings, it is easy to feel the mystery. The silence is heavy, the rooms are empty, the stone holds shadows. The cliffs seem to protect a question that has lasted for more than 700 years. Who lived here? What did they fear? What did they believe? What did they carry away? And what did they leave for us to understand? Mesa Verde is one of the most unforgettable ancient places in America because it feels impossible and intimate at the same time. Impossible because the buildings seem to hang from the cliff. Intimate because every doorway reminds us someone once lived there. This was not a lost city of myth. It was a real community, built in stone, hidden in cliffs, abandoned by choice, pressure, and survival, and remembered because the walls refused to fall. Long before the United States existed, people in the American Southwest built a world of stone, ceremony, farming, and courage. They adapted to a hard landscape. They created beauty in dangerous places. They built homes where most people would see only cliffs. And when the land could no longer support the life they had known, they moved. Not because they were weak, but because survival sometimes means leaving even what you love. The ancient cliff cities of Mesa Verde are not just ruins. They are warnings. They are memories. They are questions carved into sandstone. They remind us that even the strongest walls cannot protect a people from a changing world. But they also remind us that leaving is not always the same as disappearing. Sometimes leaving is how a people survive. This was the ancient American city built into cliffs, then abandoned. A true story from Mesa Verde, a place where the stone still stands and the silence still speaks. Thank you for watching Forgotten Files. With the help of artificial intelligence, we are bringing history back to life through powerful visuals, cinematic storytelling, and real events that shape the world. If this story made you think, feel, or question what you thought you knew, please subscribe, follow our channel, like this video, and share it with someone who loves history. Your support helps Forgotten Files grow. And the more you support us, the more forgotten stories we can uncover and bring to life. This is Forgotten Files, where history speaks again.